Loading up my stream manager on my phone. Howdy, folks that are showing up. Just kind of straightening up a little bit so I know what the heck I'm actually going to work on. I have a whole bunch of little things hanging around that I'm trying to wrap up, figure out, whatever. The usual. Oh, I don't have any more of those. Let me know if you can hear okay, because the air filter is on in here right now, but I don't necessarily need it on for what I'm going to be doing, so I don't know how much you guys can hear it. So if you can hear it and it's hard to hear me, just let me know and I'll turn it off. Otherwise, I'll leave it on. So, let's see some of what I'm doing over here. Let's see. This way. Wait, I did this before. How did I do this last time? Look, it's the ceiling. Your favorite. No, that is not. That's definitely not how I did it. Oh wait, now I remember. There we go. This is just, I already cleaned up that piece. This is just cleaning up a 3D printed kit for Kanan belt parts. It's weird, there are some things that are like evergreen parts and kits in our shop, and like I don't really ever see that many Kanan cosplayers, but for some reason these belt parts for Kanan, we sell more of than I would imagine. That's all. Not like a lot or anything. It's just, it's one of those things where like I made them for my costume. Like so many things, right? Like we make it for our own costume, and then our own costumes, and then it's like, well, we made it, so we might as well put it up for sale in case anybody else wants it. And it's just one of those pieces that like I didn't really ever think many people would buy. But I guess you could also use it for other costumes too. That's kind of the cool thing about a lot of Star Wars stuff, right? Is that you can use it across different costumes, especially if you're doing like a custom thing. I mean, it's a belt buckle and like some strap loops that all Chicago screw together. It's a pretty basic design, I guess, for Kanan stuff. So you could use it for something else if you wanted to. Kind of like our Ahsoka stuff. I know a lot of people have bought Ahsoka, our Siege of Mandalore Ahsoka belt buckles for their custom Mandos and stuff. I actually, the first person that bought somebody bought 3 belt buckles, and I was like, you're probably not making 3 Ahsoka costumes. And so I reached out to them. I was like, hey, are you I noticed you bought a bunch of these. Are you just out of curiosity, what are you doing with them? And they're like, oh yeah, we're using them for our custom Mandos. We're not doing anything to do with Ahsoka. And I was like, that's cool, that makes sense. I don't know if I have one laying around. Where did we go? Oh, I have a B-cast. I'd be shocked if I didn't over here. Oh yeah, here we go. So it's kind of cool, actually. Ahsoka's. This is a B-cast. Clearly. It's only like 2/3 of a belt buckle, and there's a bunch of air bubbles on it and stuff. I think this was a lot of times if I'm pouring something, uh, I pour something, I'll be like, oh crap, I have a bunch of extra resin. What's the closest mold, and then try and dump it in there. And I think this was one that I just poured in the last of some resin. It wasn't enough to fill it, and it had already started kicking enough that it made a bunch of air bubbles. But it happens. But yeah, so Ahsoka's belt buckle is like the Mandalorian key thing. So it's a great design that you can use for any costume. But yeah, so someone was like, "Oh yeah, we're using them for all of our custom Mandos," and of course I hadn't even thought of that. So I was like, "Well, heck, I'm gonna do that for my Mando too." So I made myself one of these to use for my Mando because I didn't have a belt buckle in mind already, and I just happen to have these here because I'm working on these for some Ahsoka builds. But same thing with her. These are her hand guards, the Ahsoka ones that we made, and I mean, everything else aside, they're just hand armor, right? And so, and they're resin, so you can trim them up pretty well. This is actually, these were some B casts that I did, but then I was like, you know what, if I just like round this off and trim it down, I can use those as hand guards for my Mando. So that's what I'm going to do. These are just, I just took a couple of B casts and I trimmed it down, so made it down so that the knuckles will stick out, which is where I wanted my hand armor to sit. So they'll just get painted and everything to match my kit, and then tacked onto my gloves. Probably put just a piece of Velcro under there, and that way it'll still move and flex in your handle, have freedom of movement, but it'll basically be stuck right there on the back. That's how we're gonna do the Ahsoka ones too. But yeah, because of course in the show they just float on her hand; they're not attached to anything, because cartoon magic. Get those out of the way. Oh, I was gonna say I needed to sand something that was like I needed to sand the inside of something, and the opening was only about, well, this is a bunch of popsicle sticks that I glued together that are the same width that I needed to have sand out in the thing. And I was like racking my brain trying to think of a way without like just doing it by hand with files and stuff, because it's inside of a piece and I needed to widen the hole. And I've been racking my brain because it's like none of the tools that we have, like Dremel, all of the bits and everything are, and it needs to be this deep. And so like all of the Dremel bits, like you could get in a little bit, but then you get to the point where the sanding tool itself isn't long enough, and the shaft on the tool isn't long enough to get all the way down to where I needed. And I was like, well, I don't want to like use like a metal file and like do it by hand, because that would take forever. And I came up with this idea after like 2 days of thinking about it, and this didn't work. But I had this big long round file, and I took it and I put it on the drill. I took the handle off and I stuck it in there just so I could, do this. Basically, it's a really long spindle sander, which having a spindle sander with a small attachment would be perfect, but I don't have one of those. This, though, did not work because the shaft on these files is really thin and small, because they're supposed to go in these handles. And so because of how thin this is and how it tapers and how long it is, the drill can't get enough of a grip on it to hold it really well. And so, as you saw when I was doing the drill, it kind of wobbles around. And so it wobbles around too much to be useful as an actual sanding tool. Because it's impossible to keep it like the pressure against where you want it to sand away material. So yeah, so that was a fail. It happens. Failures happen. Go back to finishing off this Kanan thing. But yeah, so the Kanan parts are another one where if there are this many people making Kanan costumes, or just people who have decided that they like the design and they are using it for something else, we could definitely see it going either way. How's everybody doing out there in the world? I don't know if anybody actually feels like chatting today. That's fine too. Just gonna work. Say random things here and there. If anybody wants to talk, ask a question, anything, go for it. If not, that's cool too. There's work I gotta do out here, so figured I might as well turn on the stream in case anybody wants to hang out while I'm doing it. The reason I'm cleaning this up so much is because this is for a fully finished kit, so I'll be sanding these and finishing them up and painting them and everything. While we're talking about it, though, I might as well show you guys how it works. All of the Canon stuff goes. These are the Chicago screws for our helmets. They're not silver, but these are what we usually use. But yeah, it's all designed to just take a standard Chicago screw. So like these are the pivot points, glue. So however you want to attach your straps, and then the pivot points like this one actually goes. So there's two. There's one on the back of his belt. So this piece here goes over your belt. So imagine, hey look, I have a piece of foam. That kind of works. So if that was your belt, right? And then this goes on here. And then the strap comes down from here around the leg to the back of the holster. And then on the front one, so this is the two halves of the belt buckle. And again, the two holes line up and they nest inside of each other. And then your belt is here. And then the other one of these, there's two of them in the kit, goes on there. So all three of those get screwed together, but that lets it pivot. And then this is in the front, and then the other strap comes here and goes to the holster. And then so that's those pieces, and the other two pieces are a lightsaber hanger, because this saber has a D-ring on the back and it hangs on the hook. And again, holes for two Chicago screws to hold it onto your belt. And then the final piece, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, the seventh piece, the final piece, is this clip, this belt clip. Also Chicago screws to hold it on, and this holds his droid collar, which it's interesting because so this is for holding the droid collar, which we also have the droid collar from Rebels in our shop. I think only one person maybe has ever bought both this kit and the droid collar, which is kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe they already have a droid collar and they just want the belt parts. I don't know. But yeah, it's just, it kind of strikes me as funny that most people buy the belt parts but not the droid collar that goes in said belt parts. I don't know if the droid collar is required for the CRL though, for Rebel Legion. So maybe people just don't want it. Which is totally cool, totally fair. I keep thinking about whether or not I should mold and cast the droid collar, but like I said, hardly anybody even buys the models or the 3D prints, so maybe nobody would want it. I don't know. This I brought out here actually. So for anybody who has seen the streams about Sister Night that we've been doing, this is the first prototype of the, oh, there we go. I'm doing it the wrong way. This is the first prototype. You can't really see the close-up details. Oh, come on. Are you going to focus? Focus. You're not going to focus for me, are you? Well, this is the first prototype of the Sister Knight police badge that I finished modeling it all up, trying to get it so you can see the details. But I one of the things that I talk about a lot when I'm talking about like 3D modeling and doing stuff is the getting the scale just right, especially if you don't have a good reference. And so we had bought a badge, like a police badge holder, off of Amazon to use, and I sized this based on that. But then I found out I printed this out and I was like, this just looks too small. It's kind of hard. There's not really a lot of scale, but it looked too small to me. So I started looking around some more, and I realized that this shape in particular, the 7-star with the one point up and down versus there's so many variations, but the 7 point with the point up and down and the rounded tips is the which of course this like totally makes sense, but it's the same size and shape as the I think it's LA County Sheriff, which of course, like, you're making a film for Hollywood, so of course that would be the thing that you have the easiest access to, right? Is something from LA. And so those badge holders, which actually once I found them and compared it side by side to like the screenshots from the Watchmen, realized that that's the same size and badge holder that she has, and that badge holder has a cutout that is exactly this shape for the badge that kind of sits in there. And that badge holder, the maker of it on Amazon, actually has an outline of the cutout shape and like with the exact dimensions. So I realized that this was about 15% too small. So I resized it and it's printing now. But what I wanted to do just real quick, if I can find the paint I was looking for. Actually, no, I'll just use this. I just want to do a really quick no, I'm not going to use that. That stuff is too good for this. I just need some quick, cheap, crappy paint. Where's my quick, cheap, crappy paint? Where did you go? Oh, it's over here. Okay, cool. I need so little paint for this. I don't even know why I got that. Come on, open! Oh. There we go. I really just want to get this all in here so we can see the details a little bit better. So one of the things with 3D printing is like, because it's all one color, sometimes it's really hard to see the details on something until you at least like slap a little bit of paint or primer or something on it to kind of get an idea of where things stand. So that's usually a lot of times when I'll print something out like this, and just that's why I was looking for the cheap crappy paint, because it doesn't really matter. I just really want to fill it in somewhat using my cheap crappy brush, and then a little bit of water on the paper towel, and then and yeah, this is actually one of the other things that I realized once I realized that it was too small. And I'm hoping this is mostly fixed just by scaling it up, but I also made the cuts a little deeper. But because it's so small, the in cuts for like the text and stuff are pretty shallow. You can see a little bit better though. You can at least see all the details. If it'll focus. Come on, focus, 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 focus. You're just not gonna cooperate with me, are you? If I get really close, will it focus? Oh, bam, there we go. So yeah, so you can see all of the text and the stars and stuff a little bit better. Because it was so, the details here in the very center of the star like completely got washed out because it's so small. But so I made everything a little bit deeper on the insets. Oh, come on. I really wish this camera had a better like manual focus control that was easy to use. Anyway, so there's that. It's upside down. There we go. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with where it is so far though. Hello. Focus. Alright, so I installed this thing after the last time we had this focusing problem. And the Logitech software for controlling the camera doesn't like running at the same time that Twitch is running, because it wants to control the camera 100% completely. So I'm going to try and load it up. And I played around with this a little bit, and I can kind of control some of the stuff with the camera while also still letting Twitch do most of the camera control. Yeah, it is. So much. But what I found is you can, if you install it's called Logic Capture, you can still, let's see, you can, so like I can, yeah, see, I can manually change the focus of the camera, even though it tells me that the camera isn't available in the tool. It's kind of a hack, but although I don't know if this is actually any better. Well, at least with the autofocus off, it's not going to... It's really hard to actually get it to focus where you want it to, but at least the autofocus is off. Oh, come on. Let's see. At least now it's not going to try to autofocus because it's off, but that gives you a better picture of the details. So, yeah, all the little stars, the text is all in there. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with where that is right now. Like I said, the other one has about an hour left to print, probably less now. I think I checked about an hour ago, and it had about an hour and a half, 2 hours left. This is from the Watchmen show. This is Sister Knight's badge, which isn't... in our archive, there's a whole stream about the rabbit hole I went into to figure out all of the symbology that's on her badge, because it isn't it isn't based on there's some elements that come from the actual current Tulsa police badge, but they kind of did their own thing, and so trying to figure out from crappy screenshots what all the details were on the badge, I went down this rabbit hole of trying to figure stuff out. And there, like I said just a few minutes ago before you got on, though, there's a bunch of details on this print that got washed out, so they're not on here. So this is the first prototype, but the next version will have all the details on there. Yeah, we did a full commission for Sister Knight, and this is the last piece. So the whole her costume's all done, and she has this big giant rosary that she wears also, that we custom made, and then this is the last piece, is her police badge. So just trying to make sure it's as close to perfect as possible and has all the little details that no one will ever see, because that's just how my brain works. All right, I'm gonna put this back to autofocus since I don't need to do the close-up anymore. So there's that. Where did my little rinsing cup? I like repeating my tips and tricks. This is my little trick for not having to use a whole lot of water or cleaner to clean a brush. I put just a little bit in a little tiny measuring cup and then put it inside a big measuring cup so it'll hold the brush up. Yeah. I have the hand guards and the bracer here. This is this one has a couple of air bubbles, and this is one that I'm going to be finishing up. So it's not one that we would sell as a raw kit like this because of the air bubbles, but since I'm finishing it, and this is actually I'm making this whole costume for Heather. So for our own stuff, I don't mind doing like some air bubble patching, especially since I know I'm going to be painting it and I can make sure that they're completely hidden and taken care of. But yeah, that's one of the things that was on my list. I actually have to cast some too. Oh, I forgot. I actually have everything set up and ready and waiting for me over there to cast up another set of these too. Because, or to cast more of these, because I have... Heather is actually, so we decided, we've been talking about doing this for a long time, which is, we've talked about, yep, it's resin cast. We do a whole set. So there's the hand armor, the bracers, belt buckle, and then we're working on, let's see, is it out here somewhere? Maybe? I think it might be in the house, but we're also doing the so these are a semi-rigid resin. Unlike most of the stuff we do is rigid resin, but these are a semi-rigid. So because of the thickness, they're still pretty. I mean, they're still pretty rigid. But I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but they have a little bit of flex to them. And then on the handguards more so because they're thinner. But what that does is, one, it makes it so they aren't so rigid. But also, like, if you put it in, like, hot water for a second, it'll soften it up more so than, like, a rigid resin. So if you needed to, like, flatten it or curve it more to, you know, the individual, then you can. Yeah, and then the skirt armor we're doing out of a flexible resin. So it'll actually move with the body. But yeah, it's funny that you asked about that stuff because... Dun, 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 dun. I'm going to switch and go over there. So that is the Ahsoka bracers and the back side of Ahsoka's skirt armor we have the mold for, and I was going to cast up a set of those. And since that was on my list, I'm going to do it now. Because then it can cure while I go back and do other stuff. Over to the other table. And hopefully this looks okay. This is one thing, like, when I'm over on that side of the table, I can tell what I'm doing a lot better because the screen is over there. So I have to, like, hope that I got everything lined up and everything over here before I start working on it. And let me know if you guys can or can't hear me over here. I moved the microphone, but now I'm closer to the air purifier, the air filter. So if the air purifier is too loud or is distorting the sound or anything, just let me know. Cool. Okay, and then I have on my phone, on my Google Docs, I have a thing that's for all my recipes because I cannot remember how much resin and things everything uses off the top of my head. It's too hard to remember. Oh yeah, 300 milliliters for the armor. Okay, so we're gonna do that first. I don't know about anybody else who does resin stuff, but I hate resin and anything I have to mix that's by weight. I hate. I like mixing things by volume. I know not everybody feels that way, but I don't know what it is. I just don't like mixing stuff by weight, especially when, like, this is extra tricky because I know the volume that I need to pour. So for the flexible resin that we use for this skirt armor is FP60 from BJB Enterprises, and it's 2-to-1, right? Yeah, 2-to-1. It's 2-to-1, which, like, in general, like, it's not that big of a deal, I guess. But, like, I know the volume that I need for this, the volume of finished mixed resin, and so sometimes getting exactly the amount of finished resin I need when I have to do it by weight is tricky. If I remember correctly, we don't use this stuff very often because we don't do a whole lot of flexible things. Hopefully that'll change with the Ahsoka armor. Because there's these 3 back pieces, there's 2 side hip pieces, and then her belt. We're gonna do all of those pieces out of, gosh, this won't open, out of the flexible resin. And so, assuming people actually like that stuff and want it, then we'll be using this more often. But if I remember correctly, this, even though this is 2-to-1 by weight, it comes out pretty close, if not exactly as if you had done it by volume. Meaning, like, I need 300 milliliters of this, so if I put in 200 milliliters of the part A, then, and 100 milliliters of the part B, it'll actually come out to the right weight too. Man. Oh, the attached to the fabric. Yeah, that was the first pull off of this mold. So it's funny. It's like, okay, this is a prototype, but like if it works, then it's also the first real one. That's my favorite, is when the prototype doesn't have to stay a prototype. Unlike that badge, that is definitely a prototype because it's the wrong size. And not all the details are there, but that's okay. Alright, now can I get this thing open? Oh my gosh. I need bigger, more pliers. You know it's serious when you gotta get out the crescent wrench. But then that makes it look easy. Yeah, the one thing with this stuff is it gets really gummy compared to the more rigid resins. The part A does. And like, no matter how much I clean this up, it always seems to gum it all up and then makes it really hard to open and close it the next time. Alright, so let's see. So I'm pretty sure, like, if I weigh this out, I'm gonna put 100 milliliters in here. So yeah, this stuff, that's 100 milliliters by volume, and it also comes out to 100 milliliters by weight. So that works out. And I'm actually going to put some blue tint in here because the majority of this is blue. I'm going to have to paint it either way. Because unlike with the rigid resin, I can't cold cast these, which is what I'm doing with the bracers and the hand armor. But even with those, like I usually, because there's always like some spots that aren't as shiny or whatever, or you want some variation. I hit, even the rigid resin ones, I hit with a little bit of I airbrushed some like chrome or silver, depending on what it is and the look I'm going for. Even on a cold cast, like here and there, just to like clean up the edges or whatever. So, and since I have to paint these anyway, I'm going to do blue for the majority of it, which will get me the base color pretty close to where I want, I hope, I think. And then from there, then we'll paint the rest. We actually have this, let that sit for a second. Where'd it go? Well, is that it? No, that's something else. Well, anyway, we have this flexible coating from BJB Enterprises that's specifically for painting over. It's a flexible coating, urethane coating that you can tint and paint, and you can mix metallic powders. You can mix acrylic paints into it, and then paint it on top, and it will coat it. It doesn't crack, and it bonds with the urethane because it is a urethane, and so you can flex and bend and move stuff all over. I think I have. Yeah, so I don't know how well you can see this, but so this is our Wonder Woman tiara. And this is out of the same stuff that we're doing the Ahsoka armor out of. So it's super flexible, it's kind of stretchy, so it's bending and conforms pretty well. And this one was actually one of the first things that we tested that urethane coating on, which is why it's so glossy. So we took some gold powder that normally we would have, we probably put it in this too. Yeah, you can see it's actually in it. But it's the same gold powder that we mix in the resin itself. But we mixed it in to the coating, and the coating is clear to start with. So it basically comes out looking like whatever you mix into it. But it also means you can coat things with it and not mix anything into it if you just want an extra coating on top. But yeah, so this is just brushed right on top of the casting that came out of the mold for this with the gold powder in it. And so, it's just part of the piece at that point. It's not like a paint that will chip off or peel. It's like you can bend and contort it and everything else. So that's how we'll be painting those once we're all done. So anyway, okay, so this is pretty good mixed up. It's 76 in here, which is kind of high. Welcome to whatever the heck weather we're having here. So hopefully I can get this all poured. I probably should have done this in multiple pours, but whatever. Hopefully I can get all in there before it kicks too much and ruins everything. Okay, so tear this. Alright, so I'm pretty sure, like I said, that this stuff will come out pretty much the same by weight or by volume. So I know I need another 200 milliliters of volume. And yeah, so it's a little shy. So I think the part B is a little bit lighter than the part A. So even though I put in 200 milliliters by weight, it didn't quite get the 300 milliliter mark. That's okay. I'm still pretty sure that this will be enough to fill these. I tend to, on the recipes, if it's something like that's a really weird number, like, if this was like 290 milliliters to fill this, I'll round it up to 300 just because it's way less work to get a more round number of something mixed together and calculated than a really weird number. And I'd rather have a little bit too much. I'm not going to round up like 275 to 300, but if it's close, I'll round it up a little bit. So I think this should be plenty. especially since this is going to get attached to fabric anyway. Alright. So what I do with this is I just a quick pour all the way around the edges before I do anything else, because I want to make sure that gets filled in and where the insets are, and then I'll go back. Oh, that was too much. It's okay. But then I'll go back and fill in the middle after it kind of sets in a little bit. It's almost is turning out like a teal color. The one thing with, this is pretty much any clear resins, whether they're rigid or flexible, is that over time the clear part will discolor until it's actually used and cured. Same thing with like clear resins in 3D printing, clear resins, like if you're using like epoxy resins, they all will, like, usually it's yellow over time, but this stuff specifically, the longer it sits after it's produced, and that's whether it's ever opened or not, even if it's still sealed brand new in the bottle, once they produce it, the part B goes from, it basically just darkens. It's a really, really, really light amber color when they produce it, and then over time it just gets darker. So if you are trying to make something that is actually like clear, you want to buy it and use it as quickly as possible. If you're tinting it and you're tinting it a color that you don't want to be in the red family, then you also should use it quickly. If you don't care what color it is, then it doesn't really matter. Just smacking this a little bit. I think this table is a little bit out of level, and so I can tell that the top is actually a little bit higher than the bottom. If I flip that around, it should help level it out a little bit. Yeah, that's better. So you can see, like, when we first got this was almost clear, and you can see how dark it's gotten, which it doesn't impact the cure time or anything else of the resin itself. It just changes the color properties. So I don't know how well you can see this, but it looks pretty teal, and the pigment I put in there is a dark blue, so it should have come out sort of a light blue. Like if I mix it with the regular resin, it comes out light blue, but because of the amberness of that, it's skewed the color quite a bit. And now I'm going to do these. This is an interesting dilemma challenge. I'm not sure how best to address it. So on these bracers, this part where the light panel goes, if you can see it here, it's really thin because the idea is that you are just going to cut out those little notches and then put the light panel through it. The problem though is that it's so thin right there that if I close the mold, close it up and pour the resin in, that part is always super, super thin because the two halves of the rubber are so close together that the resin just doesn't want to get in there in between. So what I have been doing is speaking of rounding up, when I do the hand armor, they take about 38 milliliters, which again is a weird number, right? So I round it up to 40, which is easy to do. I pour the hand armor, and so I pour that in, and then a little bit left, I put just on this spot, and then as soon as it starts kicking, I have the other resin pretty much ready to go, and I pour it in, and then it's all good. The problem is that I have more than enough hand armor already cast because of failures and BCAS and whatever else. So if I keep doing that, I'm going to end up with like a stockpile of hand armor that nobody wants. Although I did just put up the ability for people to buy just the hand armor if they want, because, like I said, I'm going to use it for my Mando, and it's just a hand plate. So people can use it for anything, not just Ahsoka. So I put those up because somebody asked if they could buy just those. And so I put them up as a listing, so people can buy just that if they want. And hopefully that'll help with my surplus hand armor issue. Stick this in here a little bit. This side of the mold, I think it's at the point where it probably doesn't matter so much anymore. It's starting to kick, but I'm trying to remember. Sometimes I have to remember like what way because the table is like a little off, you have to like try to remember which way it was oriented when you molded it, and then do like the mirror so that it's flat. But again, on these, it's not that big of a deal if they're not perfectly flat on the back. They're pretty close. It's looking good. Those are fine. Right? It's so awesome. And like we actually get to make 2 of them, which is pretty cool. We have one that we're doing as a commission for somebody, and then when we were like, and they commissioned us before it actually aired, so just like from the screenshots or whatever, originally, because everybody knew it was coming, of course. And so then when it actually came out, I was like, oh man, this is so awesome, and like I just want to make all this stuff. And so instead of, originally we probably would have done a lot of this stuff out of foam, if it was going to be just a one-off. But once we started getting into it, it was like, oh, like I really want to do this. And so, this isn't a tangent. I know it sounds like it. I mentioned earlier, I started talking about this, but I didn't finish. But so one of the things Heather and I have talked about for a long time is, especially me, I'm terrible at like actually making a costume for myself and like finishing something for myself. Like I'm always like, well, everybody else's stuff comes first. And so then I don't even know the last time I finished a new thing for myself. So one of the things that her and I have been talking about for a long time though is picking something that we can do as like a couple or group cosplay, and then making each other's costumes. And that way, because if I'm making something for her, I'll absolutely get it done. But if I'm doing something for myself, I am pretty much absolutely guaranteed to not finish it. So, we decided that I'm going to make Ahsoka for her, and she's going to make Rex for me. So, we're going to, at some point, but it's going to take a while to finish everything, especially Rex, because that's pretty huge. But yeah, so probably sometime next year, I'm going to have her Ahsoka all done, and she's going to have my Rex all done, so we can do Rex and Ahsoka. And yeah, that'll be pretty sweet. Alright, back to my recipe for the bracers. Oh, that's right, okay, it's 4 ounces. I think what I might do for these, because these are, yeah, okay, I think that'll work. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try and do sort of what I already do, but by doing 2 pours. Man, everything is just sticking today. Because I haven't used this stuff in a while. Probably because it's been so hot out here. So I'm going to try and do, part of the problem with doing 2 pours, oh my goodness. Part of the problem with doing 2 pours in the same mold, especially, I really don't like doing it if it's on like for like a kit, just because it's really easy to, especially since this is tinted, to not have the 2 spots match. Again, like I was saying with the fixing the other one, if it's one that I'm finishing, it's not that big of a deal, which this is part of the ones I'm finishing. So like if they don't match 100%, it's not the end of the world, because I can fix that in post. To steal a phrase. There we go. so this is actually, there was some other piece that I started doing this on, and now I can't remember what it was. But what I do is I pour, so I put all of the part A I need for the entire thing, and in this case it's going to get tint, 2 drops of black, and then a scoop of the metallic powder in here. I don't need a lot in there, just a little bit. And then I mix that all up, and then I'll pour this into 2 different B pours, and that way the mix of the color should be exactly the same between the 2 pours if all goes to plan. The other nice thing about doing it this way is it gives you the chance to get this all nice and thoroughly mixed all together before you're worrying about it also kicking and curing while you're trying to do stuff. And I should make sure I have everything ready before I pour anything. I have a habit of like mixing resin and being like, oh wait, I forgot the rubber bands or the clamps or whatever, and then like I'm scrambling to quickly do that before everything kicks in and is ruined. Okay. Got the rubber bands, clamps are right there. Okay, so then what I'm gonna do is, so I'm gonna put in here, you know, I'm just gonna do like, I only need a little bit, so I'm gonna do like, maybe like 10 milliliters. So I'm gonna pour another 10 from the mixed into there, put it in here, and then I can put the rest of the B into the first cup, and then pour the rest, and we should be golden. So that's 10. Okay, so I'm gonna have to pour 50 in. Okay. This is my first time trying it this way with this particular piece, so you know, in theory, it should all work fine. Bam. Alright, so here's the first little bit. That is one of the challenging things though, is it's so hard to get like mix just a tiny amount. So this is actually even more than I would like for this part, but we'll see how it works out. Molding and casting is it's interesting. It's one of the things that I really love doing, but also it's like one of the most stressful things when it comes to prop making and stuff, just because there's so much that is, and this doesn't matter. This is like whether you are just starting or whether you know what you're doing and you've been doing it forever or whatever, but like there's this level of this should work out, but I don't know if it will, and there's no way for me to know until I know. Like I like to call it like especially when I'm making a mold that's a 2-part mold is always the most stressful thing. I always call it Schrodinger's mold because you don't know until the second side is cured and you open it if any of it worked, and you know it's so much work to get to that point, and it's like, well, this could be a disaster or it could have worked out great, and it's going to take like, you know, a whole day to find out whether, I mean, depending on the silicone or whatever you're using, but in general, like the silicone we use is like a 6-hour cure time. So it's like, you get it all ready, especially if you're like claying something up, that's a ton of work. You pour the first side, you wait 6 hours, you flip it over, take out the clay or whatever, mix it all up, pour the second side, wait another 6 hours. So you're talking like a minimum of like probably 15 hours worth of work before you know if you wasted all of that time and material and everything else. And like I've found that it doesn't matter how much I do it or how long I've been doing it, that I have unless I'm literally remaking a mold I've made before, and even then there's still some, but I have like zero confidence that things will work out, even when it's something I know what I'm doing. I'm always like, you know what? I'm just gonna assume that it's not gonna work out, and then if it does, I'll be pleasantly surprised. So this is starting to thicken up and gel, so I'm gonna close this here in a second. I'm gonna swirl this over here a little bit more, one more time. So I got a nice coat all over that bottom part, and then I'm just gonna close this. This one gets clamps on here. Whoa, close. Gosh, I haven't done these in a while. I'm out of practice. Let's get some clamps. Lots of thick rubber bands. This one also gets straws in here, and I'll explain why in a second. So now I'm going to mix the rest of this in here, and we should be at 100 if I did this right. Total, yep, okay. There's 100, close that. And so the reason this gets straws up here is when I molded this, I did this on purpose. Because it's curved on the top, I had two options: to make the mold curved and use the straws like this, or to make it flat on top, which would have used a bunch more resin, or a bunch more silicone, and this is actually a rigid resin that the shell is made of, so it would use a bunch more material to make it flat on top. But because we need the resin to get all the way up to the very topmost point, the only way to do that, because of physics and gravity, is to give it a way to level itself out over the entire top. And so what you'll see when I pour this in here, assuming everything goes okay, is when it gets to the top, the resin will come up out of the straws a little bit, and that is a-okay because we want it to. It'll just come up enough to equalize the top level. I'm going to stop before I get everything in there because it gets two more clamps. Usually you shouldn't change the pressure on the mold after you start putting resin in it. This one is one of the few ones that I will, oh yeah, let's try to do it this way. Do that on only because of the whole thinness issue and trying to get the resin in there before it cures. So I'll put those on. Okay, all the clamps are on. I can finish pouring this in here, and hopefully it wasn't too hot in here and I did this fast enough that this will work out okay. Oh yeah, so I don't know if you can see it. The resin is probably that one you can see better than this one, but the resin is coming up because, so this right here is the something flat. So this is the top level, right, of where I want the resin to be for the actual mold. And so yeah, so it flows out the vents, and so instead of having to have this big block of extra material, it just needs that. A little bit of smacking for air bubbles' sake. But yeah, and the straws and everything just pop right out when it's all done. Yeah, so that's actually a really great question. So one of the things, and it's the same thing. This is going to sit here. I'm going to go back over to the other side. Yeah, so one of the things when you're doing casting, if you need to do multiple layers, like with slush casting, which is how we make the helmets, or our armor helmet's the only thing that we have right now that are slush cast. But anything where it's multiple pours of resin, as long as you pour the next step of resin before it's kicked all the way. So as long, like, if you pour it like the second it starts to kick is actually about the best time to pour more resin in. it will bond with itself. If you, let's see. Did I put this back on autofocus? I did. Okay. Autofocus? Maybe. So yeah, it'll bond with itself as long as you pour it when it hasn't cured. If you try to put resin on top of cured resin, most of the time it will not stick. It will, it'll peel off. So like if you're doing a helmet, if you let one layer cure too much before you put in the next layer, what can happen is your layers will separate. And I just realized I didn't have that light on. I'll probably make it look a lot better over here. But yeah, it'll actually, the layers can separate. Like if you try and flex it, like on a helmet, I don't know if you can see this, but we'll see if you can. This is actually our very last armor helmet that we made. You can kind of see the layers in here. Well, I can, but I don't think the camera is gonna really show it. You know, you can kind of see like the edge here has some variation. Well, if you're looking at it up close in real life, it looks kind of like sedimentary rock, where you have like you can see the layers a little bit on the edge. But yeah, so if you pour the layers in and you let them cure too much in between, like if I took this, like, because there's some flex in a helmet, right? I mean, it's a helmet that's not super thick, so it has a little bit of flex. But if it didn't bond properly and you just flex this a little bit, especially once the visor is cut out, it has more flex to it. Like that flexing will can pop the layers out. So you want to make sure that if you're doing layers of resin or multiple pours of a resin, that you do it before it cures if you want it to bond together really well. This one has actually a good example of what I was talking about before, where I poured this in here, and so you can see the change in color between the two because it didn't match. Because this was one where this was one of the first ones I did where I wasn't really paying attention to trying to get it to match, and it didn't quite match, which, again, same thing with like the air bubbles I'm going to fix on this. I wouldn't sell this one like this because I'm not going to send somebody something that looks like that. But since I'm finishing this one, it's not a big deal because I'm going to paint it and you won't even ever notice. The other thing too is on the cold cast ones, oh my gosh, I'm going to turn this off again. On the cold cast ones, focus on the table. There we go. On the cold cast ones, once you buff it with steel wool, this one isn't so bad. I mean, this is like just like a tiny shade different. Like you can, on the camera, you can barely see the difference in color. Once you buff it with the steel wool, that'll be even less noticeable. And so then I'll just hit it with like a little tiny bit of, the paint that I use for these is actually, where is it? I'm in the paint booth over here. I don't know what it is. It's a chrome paint though. And even though it's a bad chrome paint in that it doesn't look anything like chrome, but it's a great metallic, like silver paint. It looks really realistic, especially over like lightly brushed over, airbrushed over cold cast. It's not a good chrome at all. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, this is a chrome paint and it sucks as that, but it's actually really good for just a realistic kind of metallic look if you're not going for a like super shiny chrome. Does this actually say playing Breath of the Wild on the stream? I thought I edited that. I don't know. That's what it says at the top of my page, but maybe that's not what it says for everybody else. No, oh, now it refreshed because I clicked on it. Okay, good. I was like, did I not change that? This is also something that I, especially on like on the cosmetic face on something, I won't do on something that we're selling, which is why this is from the BCast pile. I'm going to fill the air bubbles. If there's air bubbles somewhere like on an edge, I'll do that. I mean, if it's a small thing on the edge, then that's part of what you're kind of signing up for if you're getting a resin kit. But like I always cut off like the air. This is the air vent on the racer, so I'll cut that off, and like I'll clean up the. There's a little bit of like flashing on here. You can see. I'll clean that up a little bit before I ship them out if it's a raw kit. Um, but by the way, this is like one of my favorite techniques, like ever that and it's something that I picked up from building Gundam model kits way back when. Um, but I use it all the time. But I use an X-Acto or whatever, a blade, and scrape. I love scraping stuff way more than I like sanding stuff, especially like seams and whatnot, because it's a really nice and relatively easy way to gently take off material and get something to where you want it to be without like sanding something, especially like on these on the cold cast ones, because I want to get rid of the flashing but also be really careful about not getting rid of the metal powder in the resin cast. The scraping is a good way to kind of just really easily clean up that little bit of flashing, versus if you're sanding it, then there's a much higher chance of sanding away more than you want. But yeah, like on all resin kits that, like if I'm finishing a resin kit myself, that's I try to do as much as I can with. Oh yeah, it works. It's good on like Sintra too, especially like where you've made joins and things for like scraping it off and smoothing it out. But yeah, like I'm gonna tip this up here. So this is my helmet that I got from Lone Wolf Customs for my Mando. It's an Ursa Wren helmet because her helmet is like my favorite helmet for all the Mandos. So that's what I'm using for my kit. But you can see like it looks like a lot, but the seam lines on this are actually pretty minuscule. But so I went around, like I said, that's the first thing I do. So I went around and like just with that X-Acto blade and like scrape down anywhere where there was like a seam or anything. And so now, and like that, it took me I spent like maybe, I'm gonna say 10 minutes maybe to scrape all this down. And so 10 minutes of that, and then I'll do a little bit of sanding and then wash it up and it'll be ready for priming. But yeah, I love this helmet. My whole kit is basically like based off of my armor and everything. I based off of Ursa's armor. It's kind of a mashup of Ursa and Sabine armor. I wanted something like more lightweight and easier to wear and whatever. It's not approvable, but whatever. I don't care. I'm gonna do me. Do it my way. There's only a couple of things that need to be changed to make it approvable, so I'll probably do what a lot of people have said is like just do the extra parts to make it approvable, get approved, and then once you're approved, then like when you wear it out, especially if you're not like on an actual troop or whatever, who cares? But at least then you have an approved costume that you can put on those extra parts if you need to go do a troop or want to go do a troop or something. Especially because I don't have any other one. Like if you already have an approved one, then there's no point doing that, obviously, unless you want another approved one. So yeah, so what I'm doing is, this is a trick technique that I learned ages ago from doing scale model kits, but I've seen a lot of people do this more recently on props. But you mix baby powder with super glue, which is what I'm doing here. Oh, I moved it. I forgot. I put it back. So I mix super glue. Normally you see a lot of people mix super glue and baby powder together, and then fill in air bubbles with that, and it's way easier and cheaper than like a lot of putties, especially if you're just doing like little tiny holes. And the nice part is it makes a really hard patch, but it is easy. You can still sand it, you can still scrape it with a blade. It really is a really versatile and easy way, and plus it's super glue, right? So like as opposed to a putty, which you have to let cure for depending on the putty. Who knows how long before you can do anything with it. Super glue is, it's super glue, so it's pretty instant, and then you can move on with whatever you're doing. But so the trick that I figured out is I do that all the time on like raw cast, but then, on a cold cast, you're kind of SOL, right? Well, I was like, well, wait a minute. Why couldn't I do the exact same thing and use the aluminum powder that I used in the cold cast and mix that with super glue? And the answer is you can, and it works great. And so that's what this is. This is, instead of baby powder, this is some of the same powder that you saw in the mold over there and that I mixed into the resin. And once this hardens and dries, like, you can sand it and buff it, and it will, I mean, to me, it even looks more like realistic metal than the cold cast resin does. I think I probably have on one of these. Oh, these aren't any of the ones that I patched, but yeah. So once it's dried and everything, like, it looks just as real and, just as metallic as the other parts. So, there we go. I spent 5 seconds, and now this isn't trash anymore. Let me catch up. Oh yeah, Rebels is my favorite Star Wars. Ooh, Sabine. Yeah, I don't have anything approved. We got the armor approved for both Rebel Legion and the Mercs, which is our first and only approved costume in any of the groups. And yeah, I mean, going back to what I was saying before about like finishing my own costumes, like, I've made my whole Kanan, and like I've worn it a bunch of times with just the I bought a boot to use as the base to make his boots, and I've just worn it with just those base boots on because I haven't finished the boots, and so I can't get it approved because I don't have the boots. If I would just finish the boots, I could get it approved, but it's also like, well, it's also wearable, and I go to cons and people know who I am, and nobody's ever said anything about my boots, and so there's no rush to finish the boots. But yeah, the only part of my Mando I have done is the soft parts. I was looking for that. It just like magically appeared. I don't know if you guys saw where this came from, but it magically appeared right here in front of me. I have 2 of these. This is for another project I'm working on, and I cut these out, and one of them disappeared, and I couldn't find it. I spent like 10 minutes this morning looking for it. I'm going to put these up here so I don't lose them for when I get back to that project. But yeah, for my Mando, my soft parts are the only part that is like 100% done other than weathering. And then I kind of did that, and then I was like, well, I am going to kind of pause until I am more inspired, and that was waiting for my helmet, which just showed up. I think he just finished those last week. I don't know. Time is so... I don't want to say irrelevant, but I don't... Like, time has stopped working to a large extent. But since we're talking about Mandos, I'm going to get out my little tray of stuff over here. Oh, these are all the light panels for the Ahsoka bracers. So, they're translucent. And so it goes in from the back. So you cut out these little slots, and this just slots in, and that way you can light it from the back because it's clear, because there are little lights there. But yeah, I actually decided that I wanted Westars for my Mando, and so this is mostly based on specifically based on Sabine's. Like, I took hers aren't a match set, but it's mostly based on one of hers, and I modeled it myself because I all the ones out there were like, I was like, I don't want to pay for somebody else's model. I might as well do it myself. So this is the prototype that's not completely done yet, but here's the handle for it. And while I was doing it, I had this idea, just because why not, to make a. Like, we don't ever really get to see ammunition in Star Wars, but like these are blasters, so it has to have some sort of energy cell, right? So I made these like energy cell clips. I don't know what else to call them. And this is printed. I don't think you can really tell, but most of this is printed with this translucent greenish blue. Maybe if I hold it up to the light, you can. Oh yeah, so there you can see a little bit better how it can catch the light and everything. So the way I designed this was specifically, I don't know how well you can see, but it basically has like a cap on the top and the bottom of each of these energy cells. So my idea was to paint the top and the bottom and obviously the frame, and then leave these the translucent color. So, and then I could even, I put little holes in here. So if I wanted to, I could even put like little LEDs in there or whatever and light it up. Yeah, exactly. And this is, I can't remember if it's the right or the left one. I looked at both of them and I decided which one I liked better, and I decided I'm gonna just do a match set. But yeah, it's pretty much one. It's almost an exact match for one of Sabine's, except that I made this. So this actually slides in here, and so I can have ammo for my blaster. So yeah, so it just pulls out, and then there's a spot there for a magnet, so it won't fall out once it's all done. So it'll just go in the like it's a pretty, as you can see, it's a pretty snug fit. Yeah, it's the blue one. It is the blue one. It's a pretty snug fit, so I'm not too worried about it falling out. But also, just to be on the safe side, I put a spot for a magnet just so it'll hold it. Who knows once it's all done how tight it'll be. And the trigger is in here too somewhere. Oh yeah, and here's the barrel that goes in there. And then this is actually, these are more parts. These are parts from Sabine's gauntlets, actually, which is I'm also using. Like I said, my kit is like an Ursa Sabine mashup. So all of the detail parts for her bracer, for her gauntlets, I printed in, I resin printed so that they need less work, especially because they're such detailed pieces. So like this goes on one, and then on the other one it has the two little blaster things, and then it has this little light panel. And it's kind of the same idea as the light panels for the Ahsoka bracer. I didn't model the gauntlets I got are from April Storm. I just bought her models because they're pretty much perfect, and because they were perfect in exactly what I wanted, I didn't feel a need to model it on my own. But yeah, and then this is the light panel, so again, same thing, you can light it from inside the gauntlet, and it's a clear piece. I actually printed the gauntlets themselves with a silver filament, because I'm going to paint over top of them, and then weather them up. I did a silver filament so I can sand it, and then it'll have, like, basically I'm starting with a metallic base, and then I can paint over top of that and, chip the paint or whatever, and it'll just add more weathering. But yeah, so that's part of my Mando. I've been kind of, like I said, I've been waiting for my helmet to show up so I can, waiting for my helmet to show up to really start working on the armor. I felt like after I got all the soft parts done, I felt like I needed to like really figure out what I wanted the armor parts to look like. I needed to get the helmet and do the helmet first. So I did that. Now for something completely different. This is actually the very first foam prop piece I ever made when I very first started doing this, and as you can see, it's a very small Hylian shield. But yeah, so this is the very first. You can see it's made out of floor mat and like craft foam from Michaels or something. But I made this for my son, which is why it's so small, and loves it. Especially now, like now he's playing Breath of the Wild and like loves Zelda and Link, and so it's held up pretty good considering two little kids have played with it. But, like, the paint's chipping off a little bit, and the straps broke off. So I'm putting on new straps. These are actually I put Chicago screws in here so I can Chicago screw straps on when I'm done. But what I was gonna do is I was gonna touch up some of the paint. I don't even know what paint I used on this because, like I said, it was a long time ago and it was my first foam project. The one thing I do know is that whatever paint I used was not the paint I should have used because I didn't know any better at the time, and so it's not that flexible of a paint. So there's like spiderweb cracks all over it that you can't see on camera, which is good. But what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna touch up the Triforce and the bird down here. I'm using the Plaid Effects metallic armor paints. These paints are awesome. I can't recommend them enough for anybody who is doing foam stuff, especially because it's really nice. It covers pretty well. You can airbrush it if you thin it, and it's super flexible. If I were doing this like for a more professional finished prop, I probably would have sanded this a little bit first instead of trying to paint this on top of really old paint. But like I said, it's going back to the kids after I do these touch-ups, and so it's going to get the hell beat out of it again. So really I'm just playing around. My son got it out and he's like, can you fix the straps on this? And so of course I had to go extra and not only fix the straps but do some paint. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, I don't know. They just, I know they like, it was like really bad timing. I mean, not that, they could have planned for it or whatever, but they launched, like they worked so hard to get these paints all done and do their launch and everything. And like it ended up, I'm sure they had been working on it for who knows how long, right? And then their launch was like right at the beginning of like the peak of the pandemic before everything here started getting locked down. And so like they just now in the past like month are actually getting it into stores here. But yeah, because like all of their manufacturing and shipping and everything else basically ground to a halt, and they're still just now kind of catching up from where they were. So I don't know if getting these outside of the U.S. Is going to be part of their plan or not. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how far-reaching Plaid as a company is with their other products. But even here in the U.S., like they just in the past month have actually started showing up in stores finally. After like they launched these, I think in like right at the beginning of March, and now it's August, so it's finally actually showing up in stores. I'm sure that was not a fun thing for them. Mostly I'm doing this on top of here because this is a flat red, and this is called Dragon's Breath, and it's like a metallic thing color, and like my son has been like obsessed with metallic looking things instead of like just regular colors. I don't know why all of a sudden he's like all about metallic paint. But that's cool. So I'm just doing like a light coat over top of this to give it, or trying to do a light coat over the top of this to fill in the cracks, to make some of the paint chips and stuff not as obvious, and to give it a little bit of a metallic sheen. I thought this was going to be more red than it is. It's more pink than I expected, but also I don't really care. It will be fine. It's interesting, like, my son, when he was young, really young, loved pink, and then he went to public school. When he turned 5, he went to kindergarten, and like he had pink shoes, and hey Andrew, Just a bunch of stuff that would, like a bunch of pink clothes, and like the first week of being at school, like some of the kids in his class were like, "Oh, pink is for girls." And it's like, seriously, you're all 5 years old and you're already like harping on like pink is for girls, and like it's obvious that they're getting that from home, and it's like I just spent 5 years, you know, teaching my son that like there's no such thing as toys for girls or colors for girls or boys or whatever, and like 1 week of public school has completely destroyed and undone all of that. And like so he wouldn't it was like all of a sudden everything that was pink or purple in his wardrobe was like, nope, not gonna wear it. And I mean, if he didn't like it, that would be one thing. Like, I don't care. You don't like pink, you don't like pink. I don't really like pink. But the fact that it was like his favorite color, and then just like overnight was like, oh no, I'm not even gonna look at pink because that's just bad. Was kind of frustrating and heartbreaking all at the same time, and like it's hard to. It's really interesting because it's hard to convince a kid that, especially a little kid, that you know what you're talking about, and these other 5-year-olds who are telling him something different are wrong. But on the flip side of that is now it's been a couple of years, and I don't know what. If he just stopped caring, or if the kids in his last class, or maybe the pandemic had a good thing, but like he loves pink and purple again, which is great, especially since this is turning out more pink than I thought it was going to be. Right? But yeah, like he wanted these, and it's one of those things too where like you know that he still likes it and that he still wants that stuff, and like if you are alone with him and there's no other influence, then like he'll actually admit to whatever. And so he this was like halfway through the first school year, he saw these pink Converse that he really wanted. It was like, cool, awesome. So we got him the pink Converse. He wore them to school once, and of course, same thing happened. And then it was like, no, don't wear them anymore. It's like, man, we just bought you new shoes, and you won't wear them. And in an effort to prove to him and the other kids how wrong they were, I got myself the same exact pair of shoes. I got the same exact pink Converse. And I was like, okay, well, how about I'll wear mine when I drop you off at school, and we can wear them together, and then, all your friends can see that clearly I'm not a girl, and I'm wearing them, and you're wearing them, and that's totally cool. And so that worked once. Because apparently kids don't care what other kids' parents do. So he wore them, and I wore mine, and then he wouldn't wear them again after that. So he wore those shoes twice ever. But something changed in the last few months that made him not care so much anymore. Like I said, maybe it is to do with not being exposed to those kids for a few months. But now he'll freely admit that he likes pink and purple. And so, it actually doesn't, it looks pretty red on the camera now that I look up at it, but it's actually, no, it's just going to look red for you guys. Cool. You also can't see how shiny and metallic it looks, which is kind of a bummer. But it's like a very light pink shimmer on top of the red, so I think the camera just isn't picking that part up. I like. So I have two older sisters that were my babysitter slash playmates most of my time growing up when I was younger. My brother is 10 years older than me, so we kind of have never been very close. But my sisters were, I'm still really close with one of them. The other one, sort of. Um, but so, like, growing up a lot, when I played with my sisters, we'd always play with whatever they had, and like they had this giant case of like Barbies, and my mom would make extra clothes for them and stuff, and so like yeah, playing with like that was not a big deal when I was growing up. Like they're just toys, you know. Toys are toys. Everything was all about the. I'm doing. This is the gold. This is Golden Hour, which is also one of the armor metallic paints that I'm just doing over top of the Triforce here to give it a little bit of more of a shine and fill in. These are some of the worst wear spots. Yeah, I wish. I almost wish I could stream Twitch better from my phone, but it just doesn't. There's not a good way to do that. Because that would be. My phone does a lot better job as a camera than this does. But for having multiple camera setups and using the streaming software and everything else, the Logitech cams are really what we're stuck with. Oh, dude, your Lego setup is so awesome. We went to. I took the kids to. What the heck's the name of that convention that we have here? The one that is all. The Lego convention. BrickCon? No, I don't know. Something like that. But I took them to that. The one that's over at the. It's not the convention center. It's over by the theater, over in downtown Seattle. But I'd never gone before, and the kids love Lego, so we're like, oh, let's go check it out. And it's just not conducive to having to bring little kids to like look at stuff. I thought it was cool, and like all the stuff was great, but there's such a huge crowd, like crowding around all those tables, that the kids couldn't see anything, and it was like, well, that kind of sucks. Like, it's just it's kind of it's interesting because it's a Lego convention, but it's really not conducive to little kids looking at anything. And I mean, I guess part of it is they're thinking like, well, like these like custom creation things really aren't for kids or something. I don't know. But yeah, it was pretty. It kind of sucked as far as being able to look at stuff with the kids, but of course they were fine with just running around and looking at the stores and buying stuff. They like had saved up their allowance, got some kits, all good. I think we spent maybe 20 minutes total looking at all the builds and everything. And then probably at least another 20 minutes, if not more than that, just looking at all the stores and looking for sets for them to spend their allowance on. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend taking little kids there. The only reason I actually even went is because a friend of mine had tickets that they couldn't use, and they were giving them away because yeah, it's not a convention that I would pay for to take them, unless they're older. And, like maybe my son is he just turned 7 now, so he'd probably be okay with it now. he has a little bit more patience. My daughter, though, not so much, and especially it's so crowded. Like I had to carry her, which made it. I couldn't just let her walk around in there because it's so crowded, and you couldn't have strollers or anything. And so I had to carry her, which made it extra hard to like try to get in and see stuff with all the crowd, and then like muscle your way in with kids. And like, nope, this isn't working. Cool, look, it looks exactly the same as when I started to you guys. But it actually does look better in person. I'm not going to do any of the rest. I'm going to leave. I just wanted to do the red and the gold. But yeah, so then I need to put, I made these straps with nylon webbing that I need to get I don't know where, I got to find the leather punch so I can punch holes in them and then screw them on, and that'll be all done. Ooh, ejection seats are always good. Yeah, they would love that. Yeah, I mean, I really love the Logitech 900 series cameras, except for the autofocus problem. But yeah, so it does work pretty well though. It lets you, like, I can go in here and I found that, so when I was playing with this after last time, if you load Twitch, the Twitch Studio first, so it takes over the actual display of the camera, and then you load the Logic Capture software, it'll tell you the camera isn't available because it's being used by Twitch Studio. But even though it says that, you can actually still, all the controls other than actually seeing what the camera is seeing still work. So like I can change you can't see this because it's on the other screen, it's on the screen, but like I can change the focus in the other software, and I can change the zoom, although I've never tried that before. I don't know what, it doesn't seem to actually be doing anything. I didn't think this camera was capable of zooming, which apparently it's not. So it has a zoom control there, but it doesn't seem to actually do any good. But you can also change like the white balance in here. So I mean, maybe that. Oh, auto. Auto white balance. You can change like the anti-flicker. You can change the. I wonder if I'm actually gonna put this back over here for a second, because I can change. Let's see. Oh, that's just that's the brightness, and then this is the contrast. Yeah. So I can change the contrast. Whoa. I can change the, what is that? Oh, is that the saturation? And then this is the sharpness, I imagine. It doesn't actually say what any of these controls are. They just have the little icons. You have to kind of guess. Yay! Just kidding. Reset. Whoa. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I I did have OBS set up on my old computer, and it's one of the, like, I spent so much time getting it all set up, and then I had to set it up. I had to set up from scratch on this computer, and I went to download OBS from the like, if you go to the streaming tools page in Twitch, it has like the link to OBS and some of the other software. And I went to go download it again. I was like, oh, there's Twitch Studio Beta. Well, let's see what this is. It's a free, you know, already pre-integrated with Twitch, obviously, because it's made by Twitch. And like, just to get it up and running was like so fast and easy that I was like, cool, well, I'm just gonna leave that. Not gonna bother with anything else. Oh, did that change anything? Doesn't seem like it. Oh, that's for recording. Yeah, I don't need that. Can you like turn on and off the autofocus in OBS, or like change the focus? Because really, I mean, most of the other settings I don't ever really care about, but man, the focus on these things is so whack. Oh, nice. Well, I might have to spend the time and actually do that then. Like I said, I used it. I used to use it, so it's not like I'm against using it. It was just way easier to get up and going again using Twitch Studio. Actually, I don't know. Actually, well, especially because it had been so long since I used OBS, it's probably much easier to get set up nowadays than it was back then. But it's also one of those things where I was like, I spent all that time doing it. I don't want to do it again. even if it's better, I don't care. For no good reason. Yeah, I've looked in here in Twitch Studio, and like if you go into the camera, there is very little control over what you can do with the camera in Twitch Studio. I think it's because I'm just guessing, but I think part of it is because they probably just made it as generic as possible. Because like you just add a webcam, and like it has a handful of settings that are all, as far as I can tell, they're all stuff that would be universal across pretty much any webcam. And so they didn't go into that next level of, oh, you have this webcam, so you should be able to access these controls. Like literally the only thing you can change is the size of the window, and you can like flip it horizontally and vertically, and that's it. Those are the only controls for the webcam in Twitch Studio. You can the only other thing you can do is you can set an auto for the refresh rate versus setting it manually, but that's it. But again, that's like it's all stuff that is generic to like in general. And then all the other settings are like if you want to add a border around it, and it has like color filters that you can apply over top of it, but it's not actually the color settings of the camera, if that makes sense. But yeah, so there we go. Pew. Oh, it is getting so hot in here. I think I'm going to call it a day for the workshop for right now. And it's almost 4 o'clock anyway. So yeah, I'm gonna pause on the shop work and there we go get a drink and actually, well, I'd say eat lunch, but I'm so close to dinner time, I guess maybe I will have early dinner. I don't know. Have a snack until dinner time. We'll see. Yeah, thanks for coming. I have a hard time, like, I don't want to just sit here and say nothing, even if nobody's here. And so, like, I try to think of things to say that maybe people will want to listen to if they come and watch later. But it's definitely easier if someone is here and, like, actually asking questions or talking. Thank you. We try to make cool stuff. Sure has been hard lately, but I appreciate it, and thanks for coming by. And I'm trying to get better about, like, I put up a schedule for like the next week on, if you go on our Twitch channel, like it has the schedule on there. I'm gonna try and get better about actually having a schedule every week and sticking to it, so people will know in advance and can actually show up. So thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.